a first step of knowing what you need to be delegating in the first place. Like for a lot of people, they just delegate the most painful things. Like I've seen so many people just delegate sales, and I'm like, no, that's how you ruin your business and then blame your assistant for not doing it right.
We're your co-hosts, Vicky and Laura, and this is the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast, the ultimate guide for ambitious business founders and startups. Hear from business heroes who faced unexpected challenges as we unpack how they slayed their dragon and reignite your instinct to conquer your dragon. Hello and welcome to Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. Are you that person who keeps hearing about AI and how it can help your business, free up your time, and something that you really need to look into? Well, you would have heard some of that on this show for sure, for at least the last year. And if that's you, stop what you're doing, put it all down, grab something to make notes with, and block out the next hour or so, because we are sharing our platform today with Lai Lacaba, a serial entrepreneur and certified AI consultant. She's the co-founder of 2XU, which is an AI-enabled virtual assistant agency. And that business has won multiple awards as she supports solopreneurs to grow their business with AI and executive assistants and systems. Leanne, welcome to Resilient Entrepreneurs. Finally, we get you on our podcast.
Very, very happy to hear. And I love that intro. That intro was very solid. If I was listening randomly on my podcast list and I heard that, I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this one.
And Leanne, it's so nice to see you. I'm so excited you're here as well. So let's start at the beginning. We love to hear about people's childhood. Were you a bit of an entrepreneurial kid? Give us a bit of your backstory so we understand you a little better.
I always start my story when I was 15 years old because that was the very first time I figured out you can get paid to write online, which was for a high school kid at that time who was in journalism club, who was doing her best to find a way to be paid to write. That was kind of my, oh, I can do this kind of moment. And at that point of my life, my dad, so in the Philippines, we always joke that our two main exports are rice and people. So my dad is an overseas Filipino worker. That's what we call them, OFW. And for most of my life, I would see him once or twice a year. And my mom worked an office job basically for the government. So for years, for all of my life, I only thought like, hey, the only career I have is to just be able to work in an office. That's it. So figuring out that someone all the way in the US, that was my very first gig, wanted to hire me to write basically for her blog, I was like, oh, I don't have to go there. I can just stay at home. So that was kind of my first aha moment. But years before that, like when I think I was like 9 or 10, I kept trying to do mini businesses. Like I used to pay, and my mom knows about this now, so I don't have to keep it secret. I used to get paid to write people's essays or homework. So even then, I kind of was already like finding ways to make money out of writing. So from 15, basically got that, did any gig that I saw, did graphic work, video editing, anything about content I did. I basically just inhaled any job that I could get. And then when I was 18, I went through this catastrophic category 5 typhoon where inside our house, I ended up being the 18-year-old eldest who was holding groceries on one hand, a lamp on the other, a matchbox in my mouth with water all the way up to my neck. And I was like, oh, this is it. I am probably not going to survive this. I made a promise to myself that I very much kept true 10 years later where I said, if I'm going to survive this, I'm going to make something out of my life. So basically 6 months after that, I finished my third year of college, dropped out, and then went ahead and pursued and got a full-time job working for a US publishing company. So it was a dream job for a bookworm. I was editing books and being paid to read. And then basically rose up the ranks because it was a startup, so it's really easy to get promotions. 3 years later, became CEO of that. And then it got to a point where I systematized everything off of me where I didn't have to be in the company. I actually tested out for 2 months. I didn't really do actual work and then it still ran. So then I went to my boss at that time and I said, oh, I want to start my own business now. Like this person can run the business. I don't have to do anything. He said, instead of leaving, why not start it with me? And then 2XU kind of came as a next aha moment, basically, of I wanted to create jobs for Filipinos so they can discover working from home like I did. So I started 2XU as a course originally, and I was doing YouTube videos on how to get started to work from home. And then we got our very first client. We're doing a speech in Singapore. Someone just came up to us of like, I love what you guys teach. Can you do it for me? So then we did 2XU starting then. It paid us basically right there. And we're like, okay, we don't have this yet. Give us a little bit. We have the recruitment systems and everything. We don't know what VA agency looks like. Figured it out from there. And then for the last 4 years, basically, I'm building up 2XU in that way. December 2022 when ChatGPT came out, geeked out on it, dived into it, taught all our EAs doing it, and now starting then the AI agency S2X is also starting to get automated off of me. So it's kind of, yeah, a little bit where I'm at and where I am.
Wow. That's
There you go.
fantastic. And I really love how, okay, there's so many things I want to unpack there. I want to talk about the systems. Can we talk about the systems, Laura? Or is there something else first? Okay, because there's so much there. You said so flippantly, kind of, well, yeah, then I just put a system in place so that I didn't have to be there. Okay, tell us more about that. Lean in on that.
It was book publishing. So we would get a book from an author, it goes through editing, it goes through another round of editing, get started to promotions, we create the cover, we get the marketing material. So it was very just standard, at least that's how I kept seeing it. So it was kind of easier for me to break it down of like, oh, if this kind of author, you send them this template. I basically created this whole mind map. And this was a time where I was just using my map tool called Mindomo. And I mapped out the whole business of what happens from beginning to the end of the book getting promoted over and over. And then we created SOPs out of it. And then it was so much easier for me to hire a grammar nerd basically who just graduated, because I could just give them the manual of like, this is our standards, this is what you should do, and be able to then have everything running again without me.
Yeah, let's talk about standard operating procedures. That's what SOP stands for anybody who wasn't sure. But let's talk about the importance of them in business, because that's something that when we worked with you was sort of the first thing you recommended we get on, was creating those SOPs. Why is that important? So especially someone who's just starting out, maybe they're a solo entrepreneur and they're looking to scale and hire a VA. Why do they need SOPs? Why are they important?
Well, the easiest way to think about it is then it's not all stuck in your head how things are done. Like I asked, like, think of it as your recipe book. Like every single part, every process in your business is a recipe. Like you have the introduction, you have the recipe, what you need. So it's the tools, the access, the step-by-step process of it. You'll probably have a video or screenshots of it to make sure people are following the right things. And then it's easy to teach anyone how to do it. Like you give it to, like I said, that 18-year-old intern, they'll be able to understand what it is because you broke it down that way. So then you are not anymore the bottleneck of, I'm the only person who can do this. No one else in the company or in the world could do this. But in reality, if you're able to break it down and actually write it out, then you don't have to be that bottleneck. You can take a day off or a week off from your business because it's taken care of.
Hang on, hold that thought. I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to take 15 seconds of your time to thank you for being a part of this growing community of resilient entrepreneurs. If you could do us just one massive favor and subscribe, you'll be notified of the next great episode of this podcast. And speaking of great episodes, let's get right back to it.
Further to that, Leanne, there's going to be people who are listening to this who go, ugh, I don't want to do that. It feels fun. So how is AI helping us to create standard operating procedures? And please tell us that it is in some way.
So funny that you asked that because I did that this morning. So for us, we did develop a pretty good prompt basically with ChatGPT whenever we're creating SOPs. So we have a template basically that it can follow, and then we give it essentially what our steps are. Now, one of the things I want to experiment soon is, since we have the ChatGPT app, is I'll just say to ChatGPT, create an SOP. This is the process, this is the way, and then have it create that. But that's essentially what it is, where we give it a template, we give it what we're trying to create, and if there's any special steps, and then ChatGPT just goes ahead and create it. Another way is we create basically just a screen recording of a video, and then grab the transcript, give it to ChatGPT. So there's a lot of different ways with AI that you can do that. And if you want to do from a paid version, there's a ton of really, really good AI tools where you're screen recording yourself, you're pointing things, and it takes screenshots and it already transcribes the text. So depending on how intense you want to do your SOPs, AI has definitely upped its game a lot there.
Well, that's good news. And let's talk about the value of hiring a VA. Because would you say a solo entrepreneur maxed out, right? They're stressed out. That's probably why they're coming to you looking for a VA. What do they need to know when they're looking to hire? How does one even find a VA? How does one know what type of VA they need? I imagine a lot of people are in this position.
Yeah, it's definitely a first step of knowing what you need to be delegating in the first place. Like for a lot of people, they just delegate the most painful things. Like I've seen so many people just delegate sales, and I'm like, no, that's how you ruin your business and then blame your assistant for not doing it right. You delegate the things that are first the recurring ones, so daily, weekly, monthly tasks, the ones that are more predictable, that it doesn't have to be you anymore, things that you've kind of already systematized. And then you can move on to thinking like, oh, I want to add this to my business, or I've always wanted to add this into my business. So then the EA becomes kind of the captain of that new project or new thing that you're trying to add, and so on and so forth. And then you can start training them up in the things that you don't like doing, or things that you know you should be the one doing, but no one else can be trusted enough to do it. Because then the more and more that you work really well with your assistant, the more that they can take things off of your plate. Like I always, of course, use my amazing assistant as an example, where anything that I'm focused on, she's focused on. Like when I was, for a while, when we got our client success manager into XU, never did it, never hired one, worked with him directly, because everything that was in my head, because I was teaching her, I was talking to her about it, just not even giving her straight instructions, she was able to train the client success manager more than I trained him. So it gets to that point, because you focus on something really closely with your assistant, that they kind of copy you, which is, we always call them, they become your second brain. That's why it's 2XU. And that's essentially the goal, is as you work with the assistant more and more, it's not instant, but so far estimate has always been 6 months to a year, the EA starts kind of grasping the business and you a little bit better.
I do remember what really impressed me was how important it was that we treat a VA as a key member of our team, that we're all in this working towards the same goals, to share what the targets are, to help them understand the why. Did you want to speak into a bit of that? Because I sometimes see people go, oh, I have a VA and I tell her to do this, or I tell him to do that. And it seems to be the wrong attitude.
Actually, our EA coined a really good term. This was when she first started with her client, that I loved using now, is you need to treat your EA kind of just another business partner. And then for them, they have to understand that, because then they kind of start getting the gravity, basically, of the work that you guys are doing. So what that means is you tell them your origin story. You tell them where you want the company to go. You tell them how what they're doing has an impression, basically, in everything else that happens in the company. Because when you do that, you're kind of, it's a risk. It's a scary risk, because you're putting a lot of your own love and thoughts and emotions, what you've built through your business. But in reality, you're kind of building someone who understands what needs to get done when times are tough. They are also someone who celebrates with you when times are amazing. So it's all about having kind of someone who understands where things are at within the business, without having to feel like, oh, I just talked to my assistant 10 minutes in a week and that's basically it. You're building that relationship with that person, and that's how you get a second brain, is you put in that time and effort.
Yeah. It's that communication is so key. And my favorite way to explain is you'll want to be in the same boat rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's getting them in that boat, getting them to understand your brand. This talks to values and mission and vision and all the important things that you need for a business to be successful. And you need to be able to articulate them. So a great place to start, if you've been a solo entrepreneur and it's all been in your brain all this time, being able to put those in words to another person will help you understand them better and be able to articulate them. And it's great to share that in marketing, to share that on your website, to share that with clients. All these things really help. So it's important that your VA or EA. So the difference between a VA and an EA, you say EA, we say virtual assistant. Is there much difference?
I guess, honestly, I try to use EA as much as I can, because I want to stay away from the stigma that is kind of when people say, oh, it's a VA. That's why I kind of really try to stick as much as possible to EA, because when I honestly hate it with a burning passion, whenever it's like, oh, a VA, $3 an hour, right? Or like, oh, a VA, someone to just do just my email or calendar, right? I kind of want to stay away from that, versus like saying like, oh, it's your executive assistant. It's kind of your devil wears Prada. You have two different assistants. That's basically who it is. One is your VA who runs away, what runs around. One is an EA who gets to go into your house.
I'm fascinated by AI. You are an AI consultant, Leanne. When you consult with clients about AI, where do you start with them?
I usually start, and I always say that way, okay, let's diagnostic table what hurts right now. You fell off of a tree, let's see what hurts and what we can do to make that better. And then we'll look at if you have, knock on wood, internal bleeding. So then I look at, okay, they need help when it comes to their social media posts, or they need help when it comes to creating their sanitary procedures. Then we go ahead and start creating what would be the different prompts that they would need to be able to have this be a system. Do we need to create like a custom GPT for them? What other AI tools can they add in their business? That's set. Okay, then let's look the rest of your business. And this is kind of the next level of what I do, where I map out each kind of like how I described how I mapped out the publishing company, will map out their business journey of how it goes and then start seeing, do we need an SOP here or do we need an AI here?
So this is a separate business that you're starting?
Yeah.
And you're putting yourself out of a job at 2XU with your SOPs and your systems.
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
gotten
goal.
to that point in the last 2 months.
I have to congratulate you on that, because certainly when we were working with you, there was no way you were going to be out of that business. You were in it up to your eyebrows 24/7. And we often just wondered, how do you just work so hard, so long? The hours were amazing. You'd keep, and so specific. You're very, as creative a mind you are, you're also purely logical. And I admire that.
Thank you.
About the way you work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So has there ever been a business that you've started that didn't work out the way you dreamed?
Which one? I always kind of tried and stopped depending on like how things went. Like I remember I did a business where I would sell someone else's secondhand books. Like I did that for a while. I had some sales, but I was 18 years old, no idea what I was doing. And then I also, that one was really successful, not popped in my head. I used to do book boxes where every single month, basically this for a year, and I only stopped because I started traveling that I couldn't do it anymore, where every single month I would curate basically boxes where it would be centered around a destination. It was called Wonder Book Box. It'll have a book in it based on the destination. I would make actual boarding passes for people. I would put stickers in it. And if you're a first time buyer, I would make you a passport so you can put stickers and you get free stuff. So it was this, my creative brain was just on fire for those 12 months of doing that every single month. That was so fun for me. And that was the only thing, is I stopped it because it was starting to travel so much because of 2XU. So that was very much pre 2XU. One of my favorite businesses that I've done other than 2XU.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you're such a creative entrepreneur and yet you can still sit as a CEO, which can be hard for a lot of people, right? Because creative people want to be creative. They don't want to work in the business, right? They want to build new businesses. Vicky and I have that problem all the time too. Is they always want to build the new and we get excited about the shiny object. And it takes a lot of self-control to maintain yourself. Talk about that. Talk about being a creative entrepreneur. What have you put in place for yourself so that you can continue to create new things while still running successful businesses?
Well, parts of it is, as you can see, I always have a book around me just because I know if you put something in, then it's easier to put something out. I basically have so many hobbies that I put into my life. So then I don't have to look for it in my business. It's around me. So it's easy for me to just grab, to just do, to find different ways that I can be a little nerdy when it comes to what I do. Plus with AI, I love creating AI images just for fun, creating in Midjourney or in ChatGPT itself, or even with Google Gemini, just because it's one way that I can hone in my prompt engineering skills. At the same time, it's so pretty what they create. So there's a lot of different things that I've kind of inserted in my life to be creative still.
So tell us where you think the future of this is, because we keep coming back to the AI conversation. I keep trying to get us to the human side of the conversation. So where is the future of AI?
It'll break. That's kind of, and it was funny because I had that conversation with a friend where we were talking about like, so what are the limits of AI? I'm like, we have to break it. And then that's where I see it going. It'll rise up like a big balloon. When it pops, then things can start making sense and being put into place. Like with anything, any new technology. So where I see it going, it'll break first. People will freak out. People will not know what to do. But then those who are able to make it make sense for them and make it sense for other people, those are the ones who are going to rise up really, really well and quickly, just as everyone else who's been on it basically since the start of rising up. So that's kind of where I see it, is it'll break first and then we'll find, someone said it really well, that we'll find ways where AI can do our laundry and our dishes so we can write instead of AI writing so we can do our laundry and dishes. So there'll be that reverse thing that'll happen we don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years. I don't know how they can elongate AI being such a crazy thing, but it'll happen. It'll break and then it'll settle and it'll be kind of seamless in our life.
So tell me what you mean by break, because you're currently consulting with people to put AI into their businesses. So it breaks and then what? What does that mean to you?
So I guess when I say it'll break is then people will start to want to control it. That's the main thing that's happening already right now, of like what's ethical, what isn't, what should AI be able to do, what should we make money out of AI. I see it'll keep rising and rising, and then all of a sudden people will stop using it for a little bit because we could have created the next AI robot monster who will create like everything else in our life. And then for businesses, this is what I say all the time, is people got really scared when AI came out that, hey, I'll be replaced by an AI. But if a business is able to put in AI in their business, they will learn how to use AI, they're the ones replacing the people who never got into AI. So that's kind of for businesses. It's not going to be a scary bubble thing for businesses. It'll be scary bubble for culture, for the world, the history in general. But for businesses who have already been able to integrate it, they understand what it does, they understand how to use it for their business, then it'll be an easier transition versus like for those who never wanted to do it.
I absolutely agree with you, Leanne. I think right now, so much of AI is the wild, wild west. It's just everybody shooting off the hip, figuring things out. And the policymakers cannot keep up. Governments can't keep up. Educational systems can't keep up. Everyone's trying to figure out what to do. Some places are blanket banning it in some spaces, which I think is wrong. I think the idea is to figure out how do you incorporate it and how do you put some guardrails is what's more needed. But it's because no one knows and everyone's just figuring out. It's going to be a fascinating ride. As someone that's always been on top of technology, I'm a graphic designer, so I've had to be on top of technology since the day I started, right? It's changed dramatically in the last few years. So it's never scared me. Technology just excites me. Like, okay, now what can I do with this new tool, right? How can I improve my processes? How can I make things faster? How can I get some time back? Because now AI can help me do things faster. Of course, what inevitably happens, I just find more work to do. I'd like to think getting time back, but really it's like, oh, I could do more things faster. Yay. And I think a lot of businesses are spending the time, like you said, now to figure out how is it going to help their business and how can they personalize it to what they're doing. That's where I think the real value is going to come. It's going to come in the medical spaces. It's really going to come in educational spaces.
Oh yeah.
But certainly, yeah, because I think the value it's going to bring to our future children in terms of being able to get personalized one-on-one attention, help, assistance as they need it, whatever they're struggling with. I think it's going to be amazing. Everybody's going to be able to learn. People can already learn everything from the University of YouTube, but there's just going to be so much more out there. But we're definitely going to need some guardrails. It's really interesting conversation. And I've never heard anyone say that it's going to break, but I think you're absolutely right. We're going to hit an upper limit, like everything does, right? Real estate bubble burst, like bubbles burst, and AI is just, it's growing so fast. So what do you see as a future for 2XU? What's your big goal?
So the mission is always as it has been, where we really want to keep supporting people and creating value. Like that's kind of how I've always thought 2XU. It's a multiplier. Like we get executive assistants for people so then they can do more of what they love. So then for where I see 2XU is it'll create I have like a whole 5 to 10 year plan on it. I'm like, it'll create many companies out of it where all of a sudden we have a bookkeeping agency because you've had enough demand on there, or we have a content marketing agency because you have enough demand there. So it'll just kind of keep creating these minis that's not just supporting but the entrepreneur, but also supporting our EAs of like, oh, this EA has only been doing content, but the client really wants them to focus on admin. Okay, let's delegate this content side and make it easier for the EA. Let's make it part of then like an add-on for the client. So we've called it add-on businesses for years now in 2XU. So my goal right now, as we're growing and as we're kind of getting to a point where I don't have to be there, is then I can start the other businesses that I've had in my head for years and years.
That's so awesome.
Has there ever been a time when it wasn't working well for you and you just didn't know if you could keep it going? I'll ask it simply. Has there ever been a time when you thought about quitting?
It was especially hard in 2022 for me. I think that was right at the time that we were still working together, where 2XU got to the point that because I did build it at the time where it was just me, too many things were dependent on me. Plus, I didn't have a big enough vision of what it looked like when it scaled, because in 2022, we got so many new clients, which I was very blessed for. But it also means, like you guys said, you saw me during that time where I was doing 7 a.m. calls with some clients and then all the way to 10 p.m. calls with some clients, where it was just not sustainable anymore. And then I did a lot of mistakes where I put responsibilities on my team that didn't really exist yet, just because I was overwhelmed and I pushed things towards them. So there was that. And a very for those people, I would have wanted to have them stick by me for the rest of my life. But I did make a lot of those mistakes of oh, I can't handle this anymore. Can you do this meeting? Even though they were not prepped at all or ready to be able to do it. Or I just didn't build enough systems as well where I could also step away so I can think. That also kind of got to the point where, like I said, 2022 was a very dark Q3 basically for me. I was trying to figure out okay, how can I do this where if 2XU got 10 clients next week, we could still survive. And I did. I was able, 2 years later, I'm now able to get to that point where we now have amazing managers who are working with the EAs, we have a manager who's working with our clients. So it doesn't have to be me anymore. I'm going on trips basically where I can cancel a whole week of meetings and nothing's on fire. And I'm like, okay, I can breathe. But I love 2XU so much that I did want to try to find a way to make it work. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by people I now have intentionally been able to work with and now actually have a team in 2XU. So when I wanted to quit, that was basically it. Any other time, just because also being creative and wanting to jump and do something else shiny, as you guys said. So, but automating and getting it off me first before I do that.
And thank you for sharing that, by the way. I had no idea that was going on for you. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad you got through it and stuck with it. So I'm hearing that it's scaling too quickly can pose a problem for an entrepreneur.
It's the switch from survival mode to we're okay now mode that was kind of harder to do for sure. And I think that's for most people when they're starting out a business, they're such in a survival mode that the moment where they can switch to thriving, they're kind of like, oh, what does this look like? What does my life look like now? So it is that switch over that I know, and I've heard that kind of similar thread of a story. And you guys probably have heard it too after like almost 100 episodes on there where there's that switch over that you have to do mentally, but sometimes you're never prepared for it.
Oh, yeah. There's no lesson in life that can get you ready for entrepreneurship. I mean, it's such a journey. And with everyone we've talked to, like you said, like there's a level that gets unlocked as you rise, as you scale, and you got to figure out a whole new set of problems, a whole new set of issues. It's really challenging, but it's a great challenge. And if you're meant to be an entrepreneur, it's kind of the thing that's the hardest, but should be also the most exciting, because once you break through and you reach the next level, you're like, oh, okay, wow. Whole new world.
To go through that, yeah.
And that's what we want in this podcast is we want to like pull back the curtain a little bit and give people the inside peek that this is what happens, right? Because it's not what happens when you start out as a solo entrepreneur. You don't have those issues. But when you build a team, then you start having bigger issues and you start scaling bigger issues. And you help a lot of entrepreneurs, especially solo entrepreneurs, when they're starting up, when they're scaling, because honestly, the EA is life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. You don't realize how much stuff you do day to day that takes away from the creative side of the business and the building of the business side. Can't scale without help. You just can't. So we love to share the stage and invite you to ask a question of Vicky and I. The floor is yours.
So I was thinking about this, and I have extended this invitation to Vicky. I'll extend it to Laura as well, of getting you guys on my podcast, on Scale You Podcast. So this is my favorite question that I like asking. If we could double you guys, triple you guys, let's say there's an army of Vickies and an army of Lauras, how would you guys want to change the world with kind of just the mind high of like knowing what you guys can do and how you want to kind of shape the world? What would that look like?
For me, it's really about getting more entrepreneurs doing more earlier in life. And for me, that comes around, there's a lack of education about entrepreneurship and what it actually is, the mindsets you need, the education you need. But why aren't we teaching younger people? Why don't teenagers learn, for example, that they can build a business? How do we get that message to them earlier? So that's what I really am very focused on, is figuring out how to build almost like a university for entrepreneurship. That's big vision. But if I could build a bunch of me's with this passion and this desire, I would want to create that environment, that space, that learning, that networking, that experienced entrepreneurs, bringing everybody together to really get the message out that you can do this, and this is how. Here are the steps. This is what you need to know. Here's the mindset. Here's the personal development you need to get. Here's the help. That's what I'd love to see in the world for sure.
That's amazing. I love how beautifully you painted that, and you were very passionate about it too. I love hearing it. What about you, Vicky?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I love hearing you talk about this each time. Whenever we touch on this topic, Laura builds it bigger. So I love that you asked that, because now we've got this movement of young people who are going to be entrepreneurs, and the government's going to be tasked with this problem of how do we get people who just want to be employees, because Laura's success is going to be all these kids coming out of school wanting to be entrepreneurs, not just wanting to, already having started. So I love that. And if I had an army of 300 Vickies, I would put some of them to go and get some significant funding so that we had good capital backing. Oh, this is so much fun having 300 of me. Oh my God, it's a Gemini's dream.
There you go.
Not Just 2 of me, 300 of me. So, okay, some of them are going off to get funding. The rest of us, one's going to start a foundation, as in a charitable arm of the business. One is going to get so busy on dumping all of our knowledge and experience into courses.
There you go.
And we're going to have a team working just on that. We're going to have another podcast because we love resilient entrepreneurs, but there's going to be another one. And so, yeah, my ideas are just flowing. We're just going to have lots of arms. So the army has different tranches and they're all working on different things. And I'll be the CEO. Thank you very much. Communications, nice and clear. Everybody knows what they want to do. They all have their why. They're all into it. I'm motivating them, coach them through the hurdles, remove any obstacles. That's my sweet spot.
Perfect. Love that. And I like how the two visions that you both have blend really well together too. So that's perfect.
Yes.
It is. And me and Vicky are going to take over the world one day with our army for sure. And we're building it one step at a time with this podcast, talking to amazing people like you, Leanne. You help so many people with what you do, not just the entrepreneurs you support with your business, but also the people that work in your business with you. I love that you have a vision of helping people to stay in their country. You know, you don't have to go work from abroad. You can work from home. And we've learned in this new world and this new way of working since COVID that we can work globally. You know, let's start thinking bigger. I'm in Bermuda and it's a very small island and people tend to not be able to think past our shores a lot. And it kind of drives me a little bit crazy. Somebody was talking about their digital business and they're like, oh, I'm trying to find clients in Bermuda. I'm like, why? Why are you trying to find clients in Bermuda? You've got the whole world. Go out there. I want to inspire more people to think bigger, think global, look for assistance everywhere because, you know, there are amazing businesses like Leanne's that can help your business. If you're starting out and you need an EA, I'm now going to call them EAs from now on. They are incredible for your business. They will help you to scale. They'll 2X you and you maybe get your life back. You solo entrepreneurs out there struggling, trying to do everything. We hear you. We know Leanne's the help. We'll, of course, include everything in the show notes so you can look up and see how you can connect with Leanne and her business. So glad to connect again and hope to see you again really, really soon.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun nerding out and talking creative stuff and entrepreneurship and everything in between. This was fun.
It sure was. It sure was.